Hello, and welcome to Mr. Griesel's week one. This is going to be an explanation of how to do some of the problems off of Worksheet 1A. This first week is jam-packed with stuff to do because our first test for this class, and I know this is really, really quick and it might seem a bit unfair, but our first test for this chapter or for the whole class is going to be on the 25th. So that is Monday. Well, that's the 25th is on Tuesday of next week. But whatever day you see me in the week, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, whenever you see me, we're going to have our very first test. So I'm going to put an explanation of worksheets A, B, and C on Schoology for you to watch and kind of get the gist of how to do them. I'll also put up the answer keys to all these worksheets, so if you want to check your work, feel free to do so. I will collect all of these worksheets because I have to give you a homework grade for this class, so I'll collect all of these on the day of the exam. Now, if you don't have them all done by the day of the exam, that's okay. I'll take them, a little bit later, but not, nothing egregious. But it will help you a lot to have all of this done before the test because obviously this is what the test is on. So each worksheet is going to have its own video, going through a couple of the examples. The answer key will have not just the answers, but also the problems worked out. I did them all in OneNote, so they're a little weird in that sometimes like a problem will be split in between two pages, so you kind of just have to follow that along. But other than that, so like I said, week one, we have worksheets A, B, and C. It's all old stuff from Algebra 2, Algebra 1 even. And then worksheet D is a review. The answer key to the review is on Schoology, so feel free to look at that. I'm not going to make an answer key for the review because it's basically the same stuff that's on worksheets A, B, and C. So let's go through this first worksheet. This is worksheet A that I'm looking at, and it is in the packets. Now, if you've never got a physical packet from me, I put the entire booklet on Schoology as well, so you can go in there and print off single pages or the whole book if you wanted to. I think it's like 100 and some pages, so it's kind of big if you're going to do that, so just be careful. Okay, so if we look at number 1 and 2, it says what makes an equation a function? Well, that is every element in the domain has only one element in the range. So you can't have something mapping to two different things. So if you plug in a 2 into your equation, you can't get out a 4 and a 6. That doesn't work. So every input has to have one output. Second one, what will make a function one-to-one? So this is the exact opposite of that. Basically, it says every element of the range of the function corresponds to exactly one element of the domain. So you can't have multiple inputs leading you to the same result. So you can't like plug in a 5 and a 10 and have both of those equal a 3. You can't do that. And you'll see through the examples kind of what that looks like. So first of all, let's look at number 3. Number 3 has basically they give you a function, like in this case they call it h of t, and then they want you to just plug in a couple things and see what they become. So it's not the hardest thing in the world, but some of these get a little tricky in that the reduction of them gets a little hard. So for the first one, it says just what's h of 2. And first thing, before we get too far, I know I didn't give you a lot of space on these worksheets, and that's because these problems take a lot of room. So if you need to spill on to a different piece of paper or you want to do it digitally, however you want to do it, but I totally get how I didn't give you a lot of room for these. Okay, so first one, h of 2, we're going to plug the 2 in for the t, and in this case there's two different spots you have to plug it in, the t at the front and then the plus 1 over t. Well, that's going to become plus 1 over 2. So we have 2 plus a half. 2 plus a half is 2.5. Okay, next one, we have to plug in a half now. So we're going to plug in a half at the front and then a half at the back. So we have a half plus 1 divided by 1/2. Well, 1 divided by half, you can think of that as how many times does 50 cents fit into $1? It fits in twice. So that's how I got the 2 there. You could also do copy dot flip. You could do a lot of things there to get that result, but believe me, it's 2. So a half plus 2 again is going to be 2.5. Next one, it says, what's h of x? So this one is people get freaked out about this one. You're just going to take x and plug it in for all the t's. So we get x plus 1 over x. You really don't have to do much beyond that. If you wanted to stop right at the beginning, combining them, is a little tricky, but it's kind of simplified already. But I combined them just to show you what it would look like. I took the x and put it over 1 to make it a fraction. Then I made the denominators the same by multiplying the first fraction by x over x. And you end up with x squared over x. And now that the bottoms match, you can add them together and get x squared plus 1, which is the 2 tops combined. And then the bottom is x. So you just put an x on the bottom. Okay, last one. What is h of 1 over x? So we're going to plug in 1 over x where we see all the t's. So the first step is, sometimes the trickiest one is just plugging it in. So I plug it in, I get 1 over x plus 1 over 1 over x, so a fraction within a fraction. It's kind of tricky. The 1 over x doesn't change, and then 1 over x turns into just x, and that's a lot like the example we had on the second one, where it was 1 over 1/2. So from there, we have 2 fractions, and we can combine those only if the bottoms are the same or the denominators are the same. So we multiply the second fraction by x and x, so x on top, x on bottom. You end up getting x squared over x, and now just add the tops and keep the bottom the same. So you get 1 plus x squared, and all of that is over x. So that is done. Okay, let's look at number 4. So number 4 is pretty much the same thing, but this one is a little bit different format. So they give us a quadratic and they tell us that's our x, and they want us to plug in each of these things. So the first thing we're plugging in is a square root of 2. So we plug in square root of 2 everywhere we see an x. So if we take the square root of 2 and square it on this first part, we're going to just get a 2 simply. And then the 3 times the square root of 2 is just 3 times square root of 2. You could get a decimal, but leave it like that because it's easier to deal with and it's more exact. So 2 times 2 is a 4. We have the 4 out back subtracting, so 4 minus 4, those cancel each other out, and we're left with just 3 times the square root of 2, and that's our final answer. Okay, next one, it says plug in x minus 1. Well, for this, you got to remember how to multiply some polynomials. So for the first one, we plug in x minus 1, we're going to be squaring that. And don't forget that x plus 1 squared is really x plus 1 times x plus 1, so that's how I did that second step. And then for the second part, we have 3 times x plus 1. Well, all you're going to do is distribute that 3, and so that's how I got the 3x plus 3. And then the minus 4 at the end is still the minus 4 at the end. So now I FOIL those, and I get x squared plus 2x plus 1. Then I distribute the 2, and that's how I get this 2x squared plus 4x plus 2 part. And then lastly, all I got to do is combine like terms. Well, 2x squared doesn't have anyone to combine with because there's no other x squareds. All of the x's combined, well, we have 4x plus 3x is 7x, so that's all done. And then from here, I don't know why I didn't just do them all, but I did 2 plus 3 gives me 5. And then there's a minus 4 at the end, so we subtract 4 from the 5, we get 1. So your final answer is 2x squared plus 7x plus 1. Okay, last one, we're plugging in just a negative x, and this one turns out to be kind of easy. You plug in the negative x, negative times negative is positive, so for negative x squared, you just get x squared. It's going to be positive guaranteed. Then 3 times negative x is just negative 3x, and then negative 4 is negative 4, so that's all done. Okay, number 8. This is a piecewise function, so the way this works is you look at what you're plugging in and you see which line it's meant to go in. So for the first one, it says, what is f of negative 4? So there's 2 routes we could go. We have to look at the end where it says like x is less than or equal to negative 1 or x is bigger than negative 1. So negative 1 is telling you which line to use. So for this one, we take negative 4. Is negative 4 less than or equal to negative 1? Yes, negative 4 is smaller than negative 1, so that's why I'm using the top line and not the bottom line at all. So I take negative 4 and plug it into the top line. So I'm going to square it, and then I'm going to multiply it by 2, and then just put those together. So negative 4 squared is 16, it's positive 16, and 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Add 16 and negative 8, you get positive 8, and that is done. Next one, negative 3/2 or negative 1.5, if you want to think about it like that. That is smaller than negative 1, so that's, again, going to be the top line. So we do negative 3/2 squared, and square the top, square the bottom. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. 2 times 2 is 4, so that's how I got 9/4. And then 2 times negative 3/2, well, the 2's are going to cancel off, and you're going to be left with just negative 3. So now I have 9/4 minus 3. Well, to do that in your head, you have to make 3 a fraction and then make common denominators. So that's kind of how I showed my work here. I multiplied the top and bottom by 4s to match the 4 on the bottom of the 9/4. And then do 9 minus 12 is negative 3, and then 4 stays the same, so you get negative 3/4. Now the next one's, I don't know, probably the trickiest one to figure out which one to use. They gave us negative 1. Well, is negative 1 less than or equal to? The or equal to is the important part. Negative 1 is equal to negative 1, so that's why we're using the top line again. So negative 1 squared is 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. So that one's kind of easy if you know which one to use. Now the bottom two are super easy because 0 is bigger than negative 1. So now we're using the bottom line, and it says, hey, just do f of x equals x. Well, they told us what x equals. X equals, in this case, 0. So f of 0 is 0. Same thing with positive 1. F of 1 is 1. And those are all done. Okay, number 11. So looking at number 11, we have a very interesting thing. This is kind of like pre-calc type of equation that you would see there. So basically what we're doing here is they want us to find f of a, then they want us to find f of a plus h, which is going to be a bit rough, but we'll find it. And then we're going to plug them into this big formula, and then a bunch of stuff's going to cancel off, basically. So f of a is easy. You just replace that x with an a, and you get a squared plus 1. And then for f of a plus h, you plug that in, you square it, and you'll get a squared plus 2ah plus h squared. And then we still have that plus 1 at the end, so we put plus 1. Now we take each of those two parts separately, the a squared plus 1 and then the other one, the big long one, and you stick them into this bottom of equation. So I replace the f of a plus h with all that stuff, and then f of a are replaced with a squared plus 1. And the big thing that people forget is they forget to put that a squared plus 1 in parentheses. The reason it has to be in parentheses is because there's a minus sign in front of that. And you got to remember to subtract both things, not just the a squared. So, you know, if you're going to make a mistake, it's probably going to be there. Okay, so what I do with that negative sign is I distribute it into that set of parentheses. So now it's negative a squared and minus 1 instead of plus 1. And now on the top of that fraction, I'm just going to combine stuff that I can. So a squared minus a squared, those cancel off. Positive 1 or plus 1 minus 1, those two cancel off. So all I'm left with is 2ah plus h squared, and they're all still divided by h. Well, if you notice, both of those have an h in them. So I can split it up like I did here, or you could factor it out however you like. But the h's will cancel off on the first one, so 2ah divided by h will cancel off and become just 2a. And then h squared divided by h, one of those h's cancels off up top, and we're left with just h. So 2a plus h is your final answer. Okay, number 15. Number 15, what we're doing here is they say, tell me what x equals if f of x equals 0. So all we're doing is replacing the f of x with the number 0 and then just solving for x. So for number 15, I take the f of x and I replace it with 0, and I get 0 equals 2x cubed minus 4x. And now this is pretty tough to solve like this, so we have to factor out something they both have in common. Well, they both have x's, at least one x, and they both have 2's, so that's why I pulled a 2x out front. And now we have two things multiplying. We have the 2x, and then in the parentheses we have x squared minus 2. Either one of those can be 0 because 0 times anything is 0. So for the first one, the 2 times x, well, what would make that 0? 0 would make 2x if you multiply 2 times 0, you would get 0. So that's why I said x equaled 0 for that part. The other part, I wasn't sure what number I could square and then subtract 2 from it and would give me 0. So what I did is I kind of set it up down here. I said, what makes x squared minus 2 0 or equal to 0? So I set it up like that, add 2 to both sides, square root both sides, and you end up getting, ooh, that's wrong. It should be x equals plus or minus, oh no, that's right. X equals plus or minus the square root of 2. And if you do the square root of 2 on a calculator, you'll get like 1.4 or something. Leave it as the square root of 2. I don't want you to have to put a bunch of decimals down there. And this is a better answer that way. And we have to remember it's plus or minus because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is a positive. So there's 2 ways to make that a 2. Okay? So that's number 15. All right, so that is it for worksheet A. There's a bunch more, well, not a lot more problems. There's a few more problems on that worksheet. Like I said, the answer key with all of the problems worked out is already on Schoology. So go there as you're doing the worksheet, and if you get stuck or whatever, you can check my work. Some of the problems have different ways of doing the problem, and if you approach it a different way and you get the same answer, it's no harm on that. So feel free to approach them however you like. Like I said, I'm going to put up videos, or maybe there should probably already be up videos for worksheets B and C. I will not make one for the review, and all of those worksheets A, B, C, and D will be due when we take the test. So if you have all those sorted out before the test, you should be good to go on the test. You'll probably do really well, and you'll be good for your homework grade too. So email me with any questions that you might have, and or talk to a friend, however you want to do it. All right, I'll talk to you later, and hopefully I see you in class soon.